Welcome, apprentices and acolytes, to Unlock the Knowledge. I am your host, Lord Dagovere, and today we're going to talk about how much Star Wars means to me. Ready up.
Ready up. My destiny.
Welcome back, apprentices and acolytes. I'm Lord Dagovere, and you are coming into the Dark Temple, visited by Mara Jade, Luke Skywalker, and Kyle Katarn, and so many of the Force sensitives like yourself. You know, there's one thing that I've always wanted to talk about. It's actually the main inspiration to why I even started the channel in the first place. And it all honestly begins in high school lunch. You know, sitting alone, eating lunch in high school was the worst. And it's funny how relevant this is to the channel because one thing I always kind of understood was just me and my hobbies. You know, it was kind of taboo. I couldn't really talk and tell people that, you know, maybe I liked video games, you know, maybe I liked Star Wars. Even when you were around people, you know, you had the Yu-Gi-Oh crew, you had the Pokemon crew, there was always certain type of groups and cliques inside high school. Everybody had something. And for me, I wasn't really like designated to anything outside of baseball and football. And I played a lot of baseball and some football. I didn't have the body that was big enough in high school because I was a late bloomer. I was only like 5 feet tall until junior year of high school. But even then, I didn't really need a massive body to play baseball. And I was still one of the best second basemen in the entire state of Florida, especially around 2007, 2008. I had like a batting average of like 660. It was something ridiculous. I turned one of the first triple plays in school history. It was kind of whack. But outside of that, I just remember, no matter how good I was at something, no matter how intelligent I was, it doesn't matter. I already had this title of an outcast. You know, I was the person that didn't really talk to anybody. I was the introvert. There was people, even in the baseball tryouts, even in the baseball practice, even at travel ball, all these places, the entire group was here, and I was over here. And even to this day, with Star Wars, I feel like that is the same thing. You know, you have all the reactors here, and then there's me. You know, you have all the lore channels here, then there's me. You have the prequel people, the OT people, you know, the sequel trilogy people, the High Republic people. But I'm just right here, you know? And while I do have all of these similarities between a lot of these channels, a lot of these peoples, I feel like at the end of the day, a lot of these titles don't really go for me. You know, they're not really labeled for me. And I just remember sitting there at lunch, trying to find people to talk to, you know, and maybe once a week I would probably find somebody new. But then around junior year, I want to say, I started to realize there wasn't anybody I could really enjoy. Even someone who was my best friend didn't have the same lunch period as me. So I was just often sitting there alone and just waiting. Sometimes, I mean, most of the time I didn't even eat lunch. But Revenge of the Sith came out in 2005, right? And sophomore year, I really started to see, you know, how much I really enjoyed Star Wars. And I couldn't find anybody that really loved it as much as me. And there was one person that really enjoyed Star Wars, but it was to the point that I talked about it so much, I annoyed them, you know? And I got that because, I mean, why would you want to talk about the same subject over and over and over again every single day, you know? Whether it's like criticizing a movie, whether it's like the color purple, you know, your favorite football team. I think everybody gets a little annoyed at something, you know, and they just don't want to hear it all the time. They just want to take a break. But me, I didn't want a break from Star Wars. Even to this day, I don't want a break from Star Wars, you know? And I just remember like talking about the expanded universe, the little that I knew at the time. You know, my friends who had computers and played video games, they would always recommend me things, you know, play Jedi Outcast. You know, there's an Xbox version of that, backwards compatible, you can play that. And that's when I really started to get into that. I remember driving to one of the, I don't even think it was GameStop back then, I think it was actually EB Games. I remember driving with one of my friends all the way down, like I think it was like 40 minutes to an hour south of the city that I lived in, to the one GameStop, one EB Games that had the Jedi Outcast for Xbox. There was the only one in South Florida. And I remember playing that game and it was super fun. You know, Jedi Knight, Jedi Outcast, whichever the one where you can, when you literally had the choice to kill Luke Skywalker. Mark Aragnos, I believe, is in it. A lot of really cool stuff. You know, you get to see Korriban, you know, Valley of the Sith Lords. There's so much amazing lore into that. And it was just like, wow, you know, there's so much stuff outside of the movies. And I never forgot that. Outside of, you know, I had this Batman DVD player that I would have every single night, and it would loop the entire movie. Any movie that I put in, I just clicked the option and it would just loop the entire movie. And I remember just watching Revenge of the Sith every single night. And that's where the infatuation really started, because I loved Anakin Skywalker so much and Star Wars so much at that time, and that was the bridge. You know, you see the miscommunication. You see how Anakin's got a lot of people around him, but he is still isolated. He felt so alone, even with someone like Padme, even with someone like Obi-Wan Kenobi, who even saw him as a brother, you know? He has the entire council that half of them believe that he's the chosen one, half of them don't believe any of that shit, you know? And so there were a lot of things that I got about Anakin's turmoil, you know? A lot about his sufferings, about his issues with, you know, trusting anybody. You know, and then listening to the wrong people too, just like Anakin did. But watching Revenge of the Sith also made me aware of his issues, you know, his choices that he just made, and it's, oh man, you can go on about the issues of Anakin, because yes, while he is a victim, but he's also responsible for everything that happened. And I think that's what a lot of us Anakin fans fail to realize, is that he is ultimately responsible for everything that happened. He still had control of the choice of what he did. And even though I wasn't able to really talk about all of these things that I wanted to, specifically about Anakin, I was just excited to meet someone to talk about Star Wars. And there was a lot of people, and I don't think that you hear a lot about this online, is that there was a lot of prequel hate during the time of the prequels. And not just like from the older generation, but also from the same generation that loves it today. There was a lot of people that were already being influenced by, whether it was like media outlets, whatever, you know, interviews and stuff, newspaper, whatever the heck is going on. But most importantly, the parents that were there to see the original trilogy, they already were kind of planting, you know, these views upon their children or anyone else. And every time I would walk into class and I would hear all these other people who I felt like were people I could hang out with because they enjoyed things like anime, they enjoyed things like video games and Star Wars, which I was fairly new to because I was kind of a jock growing up. I was only allowed to play sports. So when I really enjoyed Star Wars and it was kind of like the gateway to all of these other things, I saw that there was other people that I wouldn't necessarily think would be a part of my social aspect in life. And so I talked to them about Star Wars. But it didn't matter who, whether this person was a, you know, complete nerd like myself or a baseball player or whatever, they all had the same view. They didn't like the prequels. They thought Anakin Skywalker was super whiny. They was hoping George Lucas would sell Star Wars because they feared that he was going to remake episodes 4, 5, and 6. That was the conversation that was always happening around me. But I would find people and talk to them about this view. And then I would tell them, well, I mean, Anakin Skywalker is the most important person in the entire galaxy at this point. Yeah, he's whiny because he's the most powerful person. He's the chosen one. He's feeling so much stuff at such a young age. His mother died. He was a slave. He doesn't have a father. The person he thought was a father died. Yeah, of course he would be this whiny dude that didn't know how to control his powers, control his feelings. He's got the most evil person in the world that's pretty much programming him into thinking that he can't trust anybody, you know? And that conversation would slowly turn people. You know, maybe I was a little too harsh with Anakin. Maybe I was a little too harsh with the prequels, you know? And I slowly started to realize, you know, people didn't really care what I was going to say about all these other things. But when I knew Star Wars, they wanted to hear what I had to say. And so that slowly gave me the confidence that, you know, maybe I'm not an outcast. Maybe I'm not a mistake. You know, maybe I'm not the thing that society kind of labels you as secretly, you know, silently, but you're aware of it because you understand your status, you know, whether it's because you don't have the right clothes to match with everybody, maybe because you don't drink and you like going to parties, like myself, I hated that shit, you know, or maybe because you're just not cool, you know, a 10, you know, like everyone else is like seeing all these other people that they really love, you know, that are plastic. Society is telling you to be these people, but you don't amount out to that because you're not. You see yourself every single day, so you measure yourself on what everybody else is saying is the right thing to go by, you know, whether that's hairstyle, I don't know, anything, perks, attributes, you know. And the reason why I talk so much about Star Wars was because I felt like It didn't matter who I was. It didn't matter what the other person was. This was the one thing that we all had in common. It was the bridge to, I don't know, communicating in a way that I've never really communicated with other people. Star Wars was that. Hayden Christensen, Anakin Skywalker, the prequels, all these things. Even something like Jar Jar that a lot of people hated. I didn't really understand the hate. I guess, I guess, he was annoying, whatever, but, at a certain age when I got older, I didn't really feel that way anymore, but I loved talking about Star Wars. And then maybe they liked it so much that maybe they also played the video games. Maybe they even read the comics and the books, and they were teaching me something that I would read, which would later be the Darth Bane trilogy, which would also be, the Plagueis novel, which would be the Old Republic, Knights of the Old Republic, man. It's really cool stuff that really started to sink us into what we love today. And then I remember after that, after high school. But even though I was out of high school, I was still sitting at the table alone. There wasn't even a table. I was just sitting there while everybody else was having lunch. It was a courtyard, and the entire courtyard you were able to have lunch in. But I was over there sitting next to my next class because I was just, waiting there because there was nothing else to do. And I was thinking about Star Wars, and I was thinking about the potential of other episodes that they could make, Revenge of the Sith was out and released, it was over, Star Wars was done, right? So all you had was the expanded universe. And then as time got older, YouTube came along, so you started to see lore videos, you started to watch all these creators, and you, honestly, I don't know if it was just me out there, but I felt like these were the type of people that I wanted to be around in high school. Man, I wish I had someone like this to talk to about Star Wars the entire time, Not sure if we'll be best friends, but I would really like to engage and talk with these people, Maybe play Star Wars The Old Republic when it would come out, and that was really fun too, seeing that, And then something came out, something released, and it was the complete Star Wars edition that I remember getting at Best Buy. And if you don't remember what it looks like, I actually have it here with me, and it's one of my favorite looking Star Wars anything, and it's so beautiful the way it looks because it's Tatooine. I feel like Tatooine is so important to Star Wars, whether people like seeing it or not. But the one thing I love the most is Luke and Anakin. I've always loved that. I've always thought that was one of the coolest things. And there was only 6 at the time that I had this, but later down the road, I ended up going homeless, and not like a. Oh my gosh, like you see a lot of the people on the street. I didn't have a place to live. I didn't have a place to sleep. I didn't have money that I was making and stuff like that. It was very hard to get any type of money. So the only things that I had during this time was, my computer, my 2 monitors that I have to this day, actually, that are right behind me. A couple other things, and I kept this. This is what I had. I always kept this the entire time in my book bag while carrying my monitors around, just for the time if I had an outlet, because I also had my Xbox and a Droid phone, which I could use as a tether sometimes, and I just remember whether I was around certain people, and the stuff that I was doing, maybe I'd put on Revenge of the Sith, maybe I would put on Return of the Jedi. And you can even still see like the scars, the battle scars per se, of the DVD case, and I don't even know if you can actually see it right here. See if I can put my hand, but that's the battle scars of having it, when you're homeless and stuff. I did try to keep it as best shape as I could, but you can only do so much, and it's actually not that bad. But a lot of times this thing was getting kicked around in my duffel bag when I was walking the streets, and I was just really glad that I held on to it, man, because that's one of the most important pieces of any type of objects that I've accumulated over time in my life, and that thing was the part of so many discussions, and I don't think I'll ever let go of it or sell it. If you ever do Star Wars thrifting and any type of garage sales and stuff, you go back and you see all the time, I feel like everybody has seen this in a thrift store or some type of garage sale, is the VHS, new edition of Star Wars. It's got Yoda, it's got Vader. I think some of them have Palpatine, Stormtroopers. They always have somebody on the side of the cover, and those are the ones I love seeing. And I got one. I think it was 2018, 2019, right after I was done being homeless. And homeless, it wasn't like real homeless, but right after I was done and I started to, reset my life and build myself up again, I got that. Because that, I think, to me was also, a version of this back in the 2000s. And so I love seeing that too. Because back then, if you had that TV with a VHS combo, you could just pop it in there and take that TV anywhere, and that would be the equivalent of what I had today, And so I always loved that as well. I love those two pieces of Star Wars merchandise, and to me, they're the most important thing because there's always discussion. There's always you can put it on anywhere, and someone will sit down and watch. Someone will talk about it with you, And that's ultimately why I started the channel. It doesn't matter if it's like 2 o'clock in the morning and I can't sleep. It doesn't matter if it's like the middle of the week or a Sunday or something, man. I always feel like you can talk about something about Star Wars and someone will say something, Like just like I was telling you in the last video, like even the people that are so malicious with their critiques of Star Wars recently, they care about Star Wars in their weird way, Is it healthy? Don't think so, but I always love the opportunity to meet someone in Star Wars, to meet someone that loves Star Wars, because I love to engage. I love to talk with people, what their favorite character is, why they love the Old Republic, why they don't love the expanded universe, things like that, Even things where someone is such a huge fan of the expanded universe, but maybe they just don't like the Old Republic, Maybe they don't like Revan, or maybe they don't think Revan is so overpowered, which was so funny because I was one of those people that really believed Revan was like one of the most overpowered characters. He was so strong, he could just absolutely destroy Vader, and then over time, as I've talked to a lot of these people, and I whether it's forums or someone who's way more educated in Star Wars than me at the time, you come to understand, what's happening in this story, and then you compare this, like even Nova was, in my opinion, one of the greatest Star Wars channels of all time. And if you don't know who Even Nova is, go check him out. He always does versus duels in Star Wars. His videos are like an hour and a half long, sometimes 2 or 3 hours, dude. And the knowledge in a lot of these videos is insane. And I used to watch those videos like 8 years ago, something like that, a very long time ago, and he would still consistently upload to this day, and then you get the people that now, like an Explained, like a Theory, like a Stupendous Wave, like an Eckhart's Ladder, like a Lore Master. There's so many new channels these days as well, and I just can't wait to see like what everyone else comes up with later, someone that is like the person that I am today, come in 10 years later, come in 5 years later. When they have enough knowledge and experience to finally talk about Star Wars, to express their love for Star Wars. And that's always so beautiful, because I do envision someone out there right now who ain't sitting next to anybody and just wants to talk. It just wants to, whether it's like about the new movies, maybe they love Anakin Skywalker today as much as I did, just as much as I don't know, maybe they love Kylo Ren, Maybe they love Rey or Finn or Poe, or maybe they like Snoke, or for some odd reason, And I just can't wait to see how, when those people grow up, and then they say, and then they find other people that also agree with them, that also like what they like, and they start other little debate wars online, and just to see history repeat itself over and over, hopefully in a better, more healthy manner, but that's ultimately what it means to me, man, is I love seeing that. I love being able to find so many other people and talk about what they love in Star Wars. And of course, there's a lot of people that immediately get toxic and they immediately start to get, really political about this and that, but that doesn't interest me. I just want to hear what they like, and I want to hear like what they don't like, but, for a legitimate reason You know, whether it's because like when the first time someone told me that they really believe that Plagueis and Palpatine altered the Force to create, and that indirectly created Anakin. You know, that was the type of stuff that got me reading Darth Plagueis novel. That was the type of stuff that was crazy, you know, or, you know, Tulak Horde, the stories of Tulak Horde, you know, the stories of Maitre Cirque, the Exile, you know, and of course Nomi Sunrider, the person that could literally cut someone off from the Force. It's all that stuff. It's like, what? They didn't show that in the movie. This stuff exists. It's what? No way, dude. Why didn't they use that against Palpatine? Why did Palpatine use that against Luke and Vader? You know, it's stuff like that where the why. Why does this exist? And of course, you know why, because it's just a comic, it's just a book, it's just a video game. You know, it's not the real story, but it's connected to the real story. And I think that's why Star Wars is just so interesting for a lot of us, is because maybe a lot of us had that interest in finding more. Or maybe we just loved it so much that we couldn't get enough of it at a time, you know? A lot of us aren't like that today, but I still am. And that's the whole reason why I keep making videos, the whole reason why I keep talking. That's the whole reason why I talk about stories, you know, like keeping this whole thing around, you know? And it's good too, because, you know, especially with all the dang freaking stuff no longer being physical copies, I'm glad I have something like this around to this day, and I held on to it even when I was homeless. So it's pretty amazing to see what Star Wars is still today with so many people. I go into GameStop today with my with my Darth Vader ramen shirt, and someone says something, you know, picking up Funko Pops from Ahsoka, and someone says something, you know. And one of my favorite things was recently I went to a comic book store that had an incredible amount of thrift books, like old roleplay stuff, you know, old incredible roleplay books, old visual dictionaries, old concept art from the original movies. There was just anything and everything from these old legend continuity books that are still relevant today and still have a lot of amazing things, you know. And if you don't know, like the old RPG strategy game that they had back in the day, there is an entire booklet that has so much incredible lore, you know, about building a character. You know, it talks about the Star Weirds and the now, you know, all this stuff is like really crazy. That's only one word drop there, and there hasn't been anything else outside of like the recent mentions of Dr. Aphra. Just really cool niche lore stuff, man. Stuff that you can really geek out about and really be a nerd if you wanted to. And I met someone there that was also looking at these books, and every time I picked something up, he looked at something, so we just started talking about Star Wars. And then, as we were talking, and you know, we talked about the sequel trilogy stuff, we talked about, you know, stuff, he actually was okay with a lot of it, he understood the criticisms, but he was just like me, he was just like, yeah, you know, it's fine, I don't mind, I got this and I got that, so it doesn't bother me too much. You know, and when I see fans in real life like that, you know, it makes me feel a lot better about not interacting with so many people online, because there are people that exist and just want to talk Star Wars. And after the books that we were looking around, we noticed that every book that we had someone's name in it, and it was the same person's name. There was entire stocks of books. Like, I'm talking about entire, like, 2x4 freaking bins full with these books, these roleplay books, species books, Sith books, just so much stuff that just goes into detail about the roleplay game that they had. I guess you could say DLC, I don't want to say DLC, or expansion packs and everything. And every single book that we opened up had this person's name. And then I felt really sad, because although it's just one little thing, you know, this was someone's like entire world at one point, you know, and it looked like that it was a child's, and that child's had grown up and they just no longer wanted to accumulate it, and, you know, this comic book store got it along with everything else. I don't know who that person is, you know, but I really wish I was there at one point to see what made them love this franchise so much, what got them into it to the point that they were putting in so much of their money, or their parents' money, into creating such an immensely depthful, like, just beautiful collection of books. You know, I don't know who that person is today, and I hope that they're doing well. And I hope that they still really love Star Wars. But I can honestly say, I know what it's like to lose a lot of those material objects that a lot of people would question why you would even care so much. But someone like me, you know, who carries something like this around, 5 ever. So when I see those books, you know, I kind of do want to buy them all up and just keep them for the effort, you know, keep them for the sake of the effort that this person put into years and years ago, and that effort no longer go to waste, you know, because this person collected all this. Now I'm able to have it, you know. But at the same time too, you know, maybe it's what they had to do in life. Maybe they grew on and they just grew out of it, and that's it. It's just books collecting dust now to them. But is there anything that you create? Is there anything that you collect, that you have? What does Star Wars mean to you? You know? Is it something that you want to talk about and call your friend about at 3 o'clock in the morning and bother them every time you buy a Funko Pop like me? You know? Every time, and anyone, you're always trying to insert it into a conversation, because that's who I am. But yeah, fam. I really appreciate y'all coming down here, and I really wish I did have all of y'all to talk about this stuff back in the days of lunch, but now we can do that, you know? I'm not envisioning myself anymore talking alone at lunch, because there's at least 3 or 4 of you that talk in this podcast, you know, so it's really awesome to see you all. And even if you're new, there is always one place you can talk Star Wars, and that's inside the Dark Temple, visited by Mara Jade, Luke Skywalker, and Kyle Katarn, and so many of the Force sensitives like yourself. I'm Lord Dagovere, fam, and I'll see you around. Deuces.